show.
Welcome to episode 143 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. The Toronto Maple Leafs avoid elimination with a Game 5 win in Boston to force a Game 6 in Toronto on Thursday night. Could they actually pull this off? The Bruins just blew a 3-1 series lead in the first round last year to the Florida Panthers, who ended up making a run all the way to the Stanley Cup final. So we will give you our thoughts and opinions on everything that has gone down in this series so far. We will look ahead to Game 6. And of course, we will discuss if the Leafs can actually pull this off and win this series in 7 games. But before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
Anthony Bruno, very, very excited to record after a big overtime win. Matty Nyes with the winner for the Buds. So walking with some a little bit of a strut today, and looking forward to tonight. We got 2 good games. We got Game 5 of the Knights Dallas series, and Edmonton can eliminate the Kings in the late game. So we're gonna record, have some dinner, watch some hockey. Leafs won yesterday. Everything's perfect.
By the time we post this episode, I am praying that both Dallas and Edmonton win.
Okay.
For gambling purposes.
I was gonna say
hockey pool purposes. So please, Stars and Oilers win tonight. All right. Let's get straight into this. So I'll be honest, Lepore, heading into Game 5, I don't know if you felt the same way. I had no confidence in the Leafs. Matthews is out, and we still have no idea if he's going to play in Game 6. As of right now, I honestly don't think he's going to play, and maybe by the time we post this, news comes out that he actually is playing, but it seems like he pulled something in his lower body. At least that's what it looks like to me. Like the guy could barely move at the end of Game 4, or at least in the second period of Game 4 before he left in the third period. But what a performance by the Leafs. Like, they were really good in that Game 5. Dominant first period. They were pretty dominant the first 40 minutes. The Bruins, you know, they came back in the third period and made it a game, obviously sending it to overtime. Like, it was back and forth in that third. Honestly, it was anyone's game. And then, as you said, Matty Nyes sends us to Game 6. So how are you feeling now heading into Game 6 in Toronto? Because again, I don't feel great because this team has been pretty terrible at home. They've now lost 6 straight home playoff games.
Yeah, it's a weird one because you're excited about the win, but funny how we're dreading to go home for a playoff game. Everyone's in that boat, Bruno. Everyone's in that boat. Even if they win tomorrow night to push it to 7. I mean, at that point, will you feel good? No, because we've been burned so many times before. I was even thinking, even if they're up in Game 7, like we won't even be able to enjoy it.
No one's gonna feel good until the series is actually over.
Until that buzzer goes, we're gonna be feeling ill to our tummies. What last night's game was, for most rational fans, I think they understand that you're going to win games, you're going to lose games. Hockey's a sport where things can go either way, and it just comes down to a few moments. Like, Tavares drove the net yesterday, and I saw watching a slow motion replay today from another angle. I thought he knocked it off the pad and it went in front of the net, but no, it hit the side of the net, hit the defenseman's skate, and then went to Nyes. Like, what are the odds? He could try that a million times over again. It wouldn't play out like that, and it did. So quite often, as I say, games come down to nothing. But even if the Leafs had lost last night, I mean, people would have been pissed off if they lost the series and they're showing overall, but no one really would have been bothered by that performance. And I think that's just what makes Leafs fans scream, is that if they play like they played last night every game, we wouldn't have the same attitude towards this team. But it's just constant disappointment and constant letdowns. And to the points you make about not feeling good about Game 6 and how I just said even Game 7 we won't feel that good, they've earned that. Why would be? And it's kind of strange though, because we touched on earlier this season about the Leafs records when their star players are out. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. You look at the first 4 games of this series, and the Leafs just seem kind of out of sorts and disorganized, I think is a good word. Like you never felt confident. Last night, just the plan in place looked perfect. That first period may have been the best first period the Leafs had all season. And I don't know what it is, why they seem to play that way when their star players are out. Like, does something just click? And it's like, okay, we can't just have a track meet now. We need to actually dial in to the 200-foot game, and they just play amazing hockey. I don't know, but it's very strange. And I'd love an explanation from someone who knows more about hockey than I do.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I can't explain it either. You have Austin Matthews, one of the best players in the world, 69 goals this season, dominates at both ends of the ice, and the Leafs play arguably their most complete game of the entire series.
Yeah.
Because even game 2, like, Matthews dominated that game, but it was almost like it was just, Austin Matthews putting the team on his back. It wasn't a better performance than that game 5 performance across the board. Like, all 4 lines were chugging. The decor was playing well. McCabe was dialed in. Riley played well. Like, go down the list. Joseph Wall was outstanding. It was a great game. And as you said, the frustration comes from why the hell can't this team do this game in and game out? And that's why heading into game 6, I don't think anyone knows what the hell is going to happen. Now, we could look at the recent track record of their performances at home, and it's pretty damn terrifying because not only have they lost 6 straight playoff games at home, they were pretty shitty at home all season long. This was not a good home team. Again, one of the best road teams in the NHL this year and below average at home. And I know that building is going to be rocking on Thursday night, but I don't know if it's going to matter because the Bruins, not only in the playoffs, but in the regular season, have showed that they could come into Scotiabank Arena and win hockey games. And Jeremy Swayman is still locked in because Lepore, I don't know if you saw the scoreboard in game 5. The Leafs only scored 2 goals. Again, this team is still struggling to score goals. Their power play still looks like shit. Now, to be honest, they moved the puck around a little bit better in game 5 on the man advantage. So that was encouraging. But, when you look at the numbers overall, I mean, holy cow, 5.9% on the power play, while the Bruins are at 42.9%. And then the Bruins on the PK, obviously, 94.1%. And the Leafs on the PK, 57.1%. So just looking at that special teams battle, if you were to show anyone that and say, hey, who's the team that is either winning the series or has won the series, 100 out of 100 people would say Boston. So if they can't clean that up and find a way to score more than 2 goals, then they're going to be done in 6. And my prediction is going to come true.
There you go. Did you see that stat going around last night? Speaking of the power play, it's hit a point now officially after game 5 that the Maple Leafs goals per 60 at 5-on-5 is higher than their goals per 60 on the power play.
That's embarrassing.
Like, how is that possible? It makes no sense. How is that legitimately possible? I have no idea. Going into game 6 tomorrow, I talked about hockey gods last week and how they don't apply to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They have momentum. They just won. If you want to say there is series momentum, but they did win, and that was a gut punch to the Bruins. I'm sure the Bruins wanted it over. They did not want to travel back to Toronto, and you have a Florida team waiting. So they would have loved to have just wrapped it up last night at home and chilled for a bit before their series with the Panthers started. So you have that. You have the Leafs going home. So it's that thing of like, okay, well, my brain says the Leafs, I don't want to say should win this game, but they have a good chance to win this game. But your gut is just filled with so much negativity. And with those numbers, again, as far as like where my mind would naturally go in a playoff series that did not involve the Toronto Maple Leafs, I would say no matter who it was, like these numbers, like you said, they're embarrassing, but they defy logic. So my mindset would be, it has to click eventually. The puck's got to go in eventually. It's hockey. It's math. If you take 1,000 shots at the net, I mean, it's going to equal.
You would think so.
You would think so. And again, I would have that opinion of any team in any series except for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I have no idea absolutely no idea what to expect for tomorrow, and it's tough. I don't want to say that I hope Matthews doesn't play, because I want him to play and I want him to be at his best. But like I said, this team just seems to dial in when the odds are against them, and maybe they need that. Maybe they need that. I remember when Kyle Dubas was let go as general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I remember the big quote was he built a country club there, and it was too easy and too cushy for the players and the staff there. No need to ever be worried. Maybe these guys need that. I don't know. I mean, I don't have an explanation for it. And like, speaking of numbers that don't make sense, their record when missing their best players doesn't make sense because it's very good. So throw it. It's a toss up, man. It's a toss up.
Yeah, it's insane. Like the Leafs' lifetime with Austin Matthews, I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but they play at a pretty good clip without Matthews in the lineup. Like, I want to say it's over a 100-point pace without him in the lineup. And then, everyone remembers when Morgan Riley was out earlier this year and all the stats going around, how dominant the Leafs have been without Riley in the lineup the last 2 to 3 seasons. Like, it is alarmingly good how good this team is without Riley in the lineup. And then when Matthews doesn't play, they don't seem to miss a beat. It seemed like everyone showed up in Game 5, and even seeing that first intermission interview with Jake McCabe, he was being interviewed about like the team's approach down 3-1 in the series. He was just like a robot. I know Jake McCabe doesn't have a lot of personality to begin with, but in that first intermission interview, he was just like dialed in. He's like, we're here to do a job. It just seemed like the team was pretty locked in, and it showed because they were really good in that game. And again, I don't know what the hell is going to happen in Game 6. If I were a betting man, which I am, I would be betting on the Bruins here. Just because really the value that you're getting in this series has been betting on the underdogs, betting on the road teams, because in every game this series, I believe the home team has been a favorite. And I know in Game 6, the last time I checked the odds, the Leafs are a slight favorite. It's pretty much a coin flip again.
Yeah.
But I think it's a prime opportunity to bet on Boston as a slight underdog here. Again, I hope the Leafs win. I mean, I wouldn't be doing a Leafs podcast if I wasn't a Leaf fan. So for the people who want to chirp me in the comments saying I've lost hope in this team, go ahead. But it just seems like a prime letdown spot. Like yesterday seemed like a prime, everyone rally together. Matthews is out of the lineup. Let's win a hockey game. Backs up against the wall. And now they return home. The fan base is finally feeling good again. We're all believing in this team again. And then they're going to lay a big fat egg in Game 6. That's my prediction. Now, not that I think they're going to get blown out, Lepore, but I think Boston is going to play a hell of a lot better in this game. And I think we're staring at another probably 1-goal game, honestly. As scary as that is for Leaf fans, because I know we're all biting our fingernails watching this team night in and night out. But I think that's what we're in for, especially the way that Swayman's been dialed in, man.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it just seems almost impossible at this point to get more than 3 goals in on this guy. It's time for a quick break to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Manscaped. Did you know that one man every hour, every day is diagnosed with testicular cancer? In fact, testicular cancer is the most common form of cancer among men ages 15 to 35. With April being National Testicular Cancer Awareness Month, our friends over at Manscaped have partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to help spread awareness for men's health and early cancer detection. Visit manscaped.com/TCS to learn how to check yourself for early signs of cancer. And as always, you can use our exclusive code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Lepore, it's a great cause.
Guys, manscaped.com, read the details, see how you can check yourself out. So next time you grab that Lawnmower 5.0 and you're doing your thing, use your other hand, feel around. Maybe you'll find something that you really should get checked out. And the earlier you get this stuff seen, the better it is. As Bruno said, manscaped.com, learn how to do this procedure. Then after that, use the promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
Fellas, not only do you have to look good, feel good, and play good, you have to check yourself to make sure that your health is in order. It's extremely important. This is a great cause for Manscaped. And as I said, go to manscaped.com/TCS for more details. And as always, you can use our exclusive promo code GFP20 at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. So head over to the website, and I promise you won't be disappointed. It's time for an important message from BetterHelp, a sponsor of today's episode. Sometimes in life, we go through difficult times, whether that's personally, whether that's in a relationship, and your mental health cannot be ignored. And a lot of times, you can't tackle these situations by yourself. You need help. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. They make therapy easier and much less intimidating for a lot of people. BetterHelp lets you have therapy sessions as a phone call, video chat, or even messaging, whatever is most comfortable for you. BetterHelp will connect you with one of 30,000 therapists in their network. And in most cases, you'll be connected with a therapist within 48 hours. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy. Lepore, this service is incredible.
It is incredible. Anthony Bruno, mental health is something that's very serious. And be aware, if you're going through a dark time, you do not have to try to beat this thing alone. There are services out there that can provide you with some great help. BetterHelp is number one when it comes to that. As Bruno mentioned, there are different ways you can get in touch with people, different ways you can contact people. It's all up to you. Go to betterhelp.com/GFP.
Join 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to live healthier and happier lives. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy to connect with a therapist and see if BetterHelp is right for you.
Well, yeah, you even go over the goals we've scored on him. He hasn't had a chance on any of them. I mean, the McCabe one was kind of a screenshot that went through a crowd. I mean, the Tavares one was fluky. The Marner pass across to Eyes earlier in the season, like he had no prayer. He looks fantastic, I gotta say. And I mean, I do watch quite a bit of the Bruins. Maybe I never fully dialed into Swayman, but he's definitely earned my respect. And when there was the debate early in the year, with regard to who they were going to hold on to, Allmark or Swayman, and who's going to get the keys to the car, I didn't really have an opinion on it. And then when it came out that it looks like it's going to be Swayman, yeah, it's got to be. Like he's so buttoned up. And I'm sure you saw those stories over that interview he did this week where he said that he was like a B or C level prospect in junior. And he said he didn't interview with a lot of teams or meet with a lot of teams throughout his season, but he said the Leafs had shown interest in him more than any other team. Okay. And I think it was the 4th round and the Leafs were picking, and he thought, he was like sitting with his dad and he thought, you know what? I might get picked here. I mean, the Leafs have shown interest in me. I might get picked here. And they didn't pick him, to his surprise. And the worst part about it is, had they went with like a forward or a D, okay, they just didn't go for a goalie. No, we picked a goalie. They picked Scott. So they picked Scott instead of Swayman. Correct? Yep. And then the Bruins, the next pick, took Swayman.
Unreal, man.
So added to the chapter of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But let me ask you this, Bruno, and everyone comment down below, Leafs fans, with your answer, okay? And this shows the torment that we live with, okay? What would you rather, genuinely, what would you rather? They just lose tomorrow and we're done here, or they push it to 7 and lose? If you had to pick, what's worse? I'll put it that way.
You know what, Lepore? Just for the content, I want to see this go to 7. And yeah. I'd rather see them lose in 7 than lose in 6. And I know that sounds like just twisted and sick and just disgusting. But for content purposes and just for entertainment purposes, holy shit, who wouldn't want to see another Bruins Leafs Game 7 at TD Garden? Yeah. I mean, that is just theater at its finest.
Yeah. And we talk about nervous buildings and how the Leafs, our building is always nervous. That'll be a nervous building in Boston, man. There were Bruins fans on Twitter, Bruins journalists saying last night openly, I don't feel good about this. I am not comfortable with this. And it's actually insane how many similarities there are in this series compared to their series against Florida last year. Last year against Florida, won game 1 on home ice, lost game 2 on home ice, just like they did in this series. They went to Florida, won both, just like they did against the Leafs to go up 3-1. Then they had the chance to close it at home in game 5, They lost in overtime. And then someone threw this one out today. I didn't even, oh my God, I wouldn't have noticed this on the spot. Someone had to point it out. But last year in game 5, Matthew Tkachuk scored the overtime winner. This time it was Matthew Nyes, and they're both born in Arizona.
That's freaky, man.
Freaky, man.
That is freaky. And actually, just before we came on to record, I was watching Brad Marchand's breakaway in game 5 last year against Florida. So the Bruins had a chance on Brad Marchand's stick to win the series with like 4 seconds left in regulation in game 5. He comes in on a breakaway. He gets stoned by Bobrovsky, and then the Panthers end up winning in overtime. And then, of course, win the series in 7. So do you think these ghosts are real for this Bruins team? Because they've now lost in the first round 2 years in a row, both times in 7 games. They lost in 7 to Carolina. Last year, they lost in 7 to the Bruins after the greatest regular season in NHL history, blowing a 3-1 lead. Do you think they're starting to get a little scared here? Like they might play pretty hesitant, honestly. Who knows how they're going to come out in this game 6 with all, the stuff that's happened in their recent past.
You're lying to yourself, because it's the stuff we go over with the Leafs and the reputation. And I'm typically not a negative fan. I can't stand when people almost seem like they want a team to lose more than they want a team to win. So I won't say that I would feel better about this than the Leafs winning, but the Bruins losing this way would almost meet how happy I would be with the Leafs winning, if that makes sense. For them to blow it again, up 3-1 with home ice, and even now with all the attention it would be because it was Toronto. Oh, Bruno, I would be a happy man. Happy man. I wouldn't want it against any other team. I guess that's the way to put it. Man, and that's a compliment to the Bruins and their history and how they've been a demon to us.
We all talk about exercising demons. Like, the definition of exercising your demons is beating this team in 7 games. Jesus. I mean, that would just close the door on almost all their ghosts. And who knows, maybe they get pumped against Florida in the second round. And listen, I'm on the record as saying whether the Bruins or Leafs win this series, I think Florida gets through to the conference final regardless. But if they can close that chapter of all the just horrific moments against Boston going back to 2013 by coming back from 3-1 down 11 years later to beat this team in 7 games, it would be something, man. And yeah, I think the Bruins are for sure a little bit scared. Like, they're thinking in the back of their heads. Also, the fact that Matthews might be out again. It's God forbid they lose 2 games in a row, 2 closeout games without the best player on the Leafs in the lineup. And then they got to go back to Boston for game 7 when it's holy shit, anything could happen at this point. Yeah, man, this could get real interesting really quick. Now, listen, I still think the Bruins are going to win this series. Just looking at the series prices right now, just looking at the betting odds, the Bruins right now to win the series are minus 370, which is about a 78% implied probability that they're going to win, whereas the Leafs are plus 305, an implied probability of a little under 25%. So, chances are the Leafs are obviously still going to lose this series, but holy shit, is this going to get interesting if they find a way to pull it off in game 6. And depending on what sportsbook you look at here, I'm looking at Pinnacle. They actually have it priced minus 106 a side. So it's basically a coin flip for game 6.
Well, no Matthews, right? I guess they're assuming no Matthews.
And if Matthews plays, I'm assuming that the Leafs will become a slight favorite. But depending on the sports book you look at, some books have the Leafs as a slight favorite in game 6. But yeah, this could get really interesting, Lepore.
Yeah, let me tell you something. I took the Leafs down 3-1 to win the series at plus 850.
Holy shit. Okay, I like that.
Because my thinking was, okay, well, 850, sure. You never know. Could happen. And also, they push it to 7. You hedge your bet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's looking good right now. Well, ask me in 28 hours.
So are you sticking with your prediction? Because before the series, you had Bruins in 7, which is literally just the worst case scenario, just biggest gut punch ever. I had Bruins in 6. How are you feeling right now? You still think the Bruins are going to win this in 7? Are they going to win tomorrow? What are you feeling?
I'll stick to it. I'll stick to Bruins in 7, Bruno. God, I hope I'm wrong. God, I hope I'm wrong. This is a weird question for Leafs fans too, and maybe I'm being naive here. So let's say they do it. Let's say the Leafs come roaring back and beat the Bruins, go on to play Florida in the second round. Okay. Last year, it was a big deal. We were all happy because the Leafs finally won a playoff series. But there was still a lot of venting when they lost to Florida. Maybe it had to do with how they lost in 5 games. And there was that specifically that game 3, they were a no-show. If the Leafs fight back, beat Boston, and lose a tight series to Florida, I mean, people are going to shit on them because they're the Toronto Maple Leafs, and people are going to point fingers and laugh and whatever, because that's just the reality of the situation. But I'm not going to say, as a fan base, could we get to a point where we're actually proud of our team? Because I think we have higher expectations than the second round. But would it dial it down as much as it possibly could? Doing something as amazing as coming back from 3-1 down against the Boston Bruins without home ice advantage.
No, I actually think that's a really good point. I think if the Leafs are actually able to come back, show resilience and win this series in 7 against Boston, and then let's say take Florida to 7, I think the narrative shifts a little bit because listen, if they lose in game 6, we all know what the narrative is going to be.
It's bad.
True Living has to trade Mitch Marner.
Yeah.
John Tavares, get him the hell out of here. Listen, I know they all have no movement clauses, but you know what I'm trying to say here. Everyone's going to want everyone out the door. We need to upgrade the D. We need this. We need that. It's just going to be not completely blow it up because Matthews and Nylander are under contract for a long time, and you're never going to, hit rock bottom with those guys. But there's going to be a strong narrative around this team that the culture has to change. Shanahan has to go now with Keith Pelly, the new president of MLSE. People are talking about that. Whereas if they actually show resilience for once in their lives and come back in game 7 to beat the Bruins and then make it a hell of a series against Florida, who I think is the best team in the Eastern Conference and who I think is actually going to win the Stanley Cup, then maybe the narrative shifts a little bit to, they actually show that they got some heart.
Yeah.
Maybe they should consider running it back with, the same core and maybe changing some of the periphery pieces and try to add another defenseman or something. And maybe people aren't as crazy about making these like wide sweeping changes.
Yeah. What got people buzzing a little bit today, I don't know if you saw Brindamore's quotes that essentially
it's
not looking good
in Carolina. Like it looks like that owner just doesn't want to pay him what he's worth.
And they said that last time, right? That people thought he could be gone then because the guy's just not willing to pay for a coach. But you're seeing these numbers come out. Like I've heard these numbers floating around with Berube or, if somebody wants to bring Quenneville back or what Brindamore would get, it's getting into big money now, man. So for some of these teams, it's going to be tough to lure like high-end coaches. And I mean, we constantly talk about how tough it is for certain markets to acquire talent just based on geography or they're a Canadian team or where they sit in the standings. Like now it's going to be about pure dollars because there's no cap with what you can give a coach. And I'm sure there will be some people screaming if the Leafs lose tomorrow night, a lot of people will be screaming for the Leafs to drop a dump truck full of money on Rod Brindamore's front lawn and be like, come be our coach. But fun, man. We haven't really touched on the Matthews and Nylander situation. And when I say that, I mean Nylander missing the first 3 games and now Matthews being out. I'm upset about this.
Yeah, no, it's shit luck. I touched on this during the last podcast, man. Like, of course, this would happen to this team. But listen, like the reality of the situation is 2 of their best players, 2 of their highest paid players have missed a big chunk of this series. And I think the Leafs would probably be up right now, to be honest with you, if those guys were healthy.
Yeah, see, I think for me, I've never really been angry at the Toronto Maple Leafs as an organization, right? And people would laugh at me and say, well, you should be. But I more mean with like a certain decision. I remember like I wasn't happy when Burke got let go, but the more I thought about it, like now that I look back, I'm like, yeah, I can see it and hear rumors of why he was fired. And it was what it was. But a lot of people aren't believing the Nylander migraine thing We have like no info on Matthews. Like they were saying food poisoning. Now there's rumors of an injury. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic, Bruno, but I expect them to tell us what it was.
They
And
better fucking tell us what it was. If they lose the series, I
yeah,
hope that they would tell us what's been actually happening with these guys.
like I understand at this point because okay, you don't want the other team to know, and if you just have a policy in the playoffs or even the regular season just to keep buttoned up and not say anything, but you have people who love this team. You have people who spend a lot of money on this team, people who go to games, people who buy jerseys, people whose like lives revolve around the Toronto Maple Leafs schedule. The fan base deserves to know. The fan base full blown deserves to know why their best player is missing playoff games. And if it is just food poisoning, and if it is food poisoning, this is the worst food poisoning I've ever heard of. Because everyone I talk to is like, yeah, 1 or 2 days and you feel like shit, but whatever. And even if Matthews was like at 80%, he would play. Right. So if they lose tomorrow night, I want to, as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, I will be really disappointed if they don't release why these guys were not in the lineup. Think of it, man. They both just extended. These are two players who were giving a combined like $25 million going forward. We deserve to know.
And that's why, Lepore, I'd be stunned if Nylander wasn't diagnosed with a concussion. Like, I think it's almost a lock that they diagnosed him with a concussion. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't have inside information, but that dude would not be missing that many games if it wasn't something that serious. And it's the same with Matthews.
Yeah.
Sure, maybe it started off as food poisoning or a 24-hour flu bug, but you're telling me that dude, after everything he did this year, knowing what this means to this organization, to the city of Toronto, you think he would miss multiple playoff games with an illness? Are you kidding me? This guy went out for the morning skate before game 5. He was out there for what, like 5-10 minutes and basically said, fuck it, like I can't even do this, which indicates to me that there's something going on maybe in his lower body where he can't even skate, because at the end of game 4, or again, at the end of the second period of game 4, like, you know, one of his last shifts of the game, looked like he could barely move out there. Like there's no chance this guy is missing games if it's just a sickness. There's got to be something going on, and I think it's a pretty serious injury.
Yeah, these people coming out like, oh, like he's not playing because of a tummy ache. Like, guys, this is any NHL player. This is their career. These are playoff games. Come on. If they could play, they would play. Like I said, even at 70, 80%, they would make it happen. So they're serious things. And like I said, I think Leafs fans deserve to find out what they actually are when we're all said and done here.
Lepore, is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
Pins and needles, man. Pins and needles. Game 6 in Toronto. If you're going, be loud. Drink an extra beer, one more than spend an extra $20 and drink one more beer than you normally would. Have a good time. Be crazy. Support the boys, and hopefully we have a game on Saturday night. Game 7 Saturday night. How exciting would that be? And I think that seed of doubt has been planted in the Bruins just a little bit. Let's really plan it. Let's plan it. And I don't know what to expect for tomorrow. Like I'm not optimistic, but there is that thing in me that's like, yeah, the Leafs might just come out and blow the doors off. Who knows? Because we haven't seen it yet. So maybe that's the night it happens. So it's possible. Like I kind of have no prediction for tomorrow is the way I feel about it.
I'm pretty confident, honestly, in what I think. Like, when it comes to how the Bruins are going to show up in game 6, because I think they're going to be pretty dialed in. But when it comes to the Leafs, I have no fucking clue. They could come out, they could score 3 goals in the first period. They could be a disaster in the first period, and Joseph Woll is letting everything in. I have no idea what to expect. We don't know if Matthews is playing yet. But again, for theater purposes, for entertainment purposes, it would be great if this went to game 7. I also wouldn't mind if Boston won the series in 6. I picked Boston to win in 6. I have a bet on Boston to win the series. So that wouldn't be bad either. It's a win-win, Lepore. It's a win-win. Obviously, I want the Leafs to win this in 7. I think it would be fantastic. But yeah, I'm just hoping that we get a hell of an entertaining end to this series. Yeah. But that is going to do it for episode 143 of the Gluttons for Punishment podcast, or GFP. a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. I know this was a little bit shorter than our normal episodes of the podcast, but I promise we will be right back, especially if the Leafs lose this in 6, or even if they push it to 7 and win in 7. We're obviously going to have a lot to say about it, so please stay tuned to the GFP podcast for the best content during the Stanley Cup playoffs. And listen, if you're a first-time listener, long-time listener, and you really enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you really enjoyed the content, then smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below with your prediction for this series, and ring the notification bell while you're at it so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. I promise just doing these little things really, really helps this podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. For Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. Go Leafs, go, baby. We will see you guys very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone.